Hey guys, what's up? Here is the spoiler stuff for The Locksmith, the new film The Locksmith, which came out on Friday as well as digital and on demand. It stars Ryan Phillippe and it also stars Kate Bosworth, and it is directed by Nicolas Harvard. So right now for this spoiler section, you're going to have my interview with Nicolas Harvard, just talking about the end of the movie. This is, okay, for Harvard stuff, it's good because it's about 4 minutes worth of spoiler discussions, which I'm going to get into. I also have a very quick film bite, whatever, video clip of Ryan Phillippe talking about the ending of The Locksmith. That said, Philippe's answer is a little bit vague in general, praising the actors. I did ask him a spoiler question, but he didn't really dive into it that much. But still, these two video clips are exclusive here for you guys for Patreon. I will not put it on deepestdream.com or actually the YouTube channel for public consumption. It's only for the select group of people here over at CinemAddicts. So, look, The Locksmith, I'm going to go over the plot summary and the ending right now, so you guys have a little bit of a brass tacks on what it's all about. And then I'm going to just tie in together the clips. First from Nicolas Harvard. That's, again, 4 minutes worth of really interesting spoiler stuff. So whether you like this movie or not, whether you love it, it's very interesting because the original version of The Locksmith was different than the final version by a couple of very interesting plot twists, etc., etc. So, and then you get the Ryan Phillippe video clip, which is, again, exclusive here. So I'm going to go over it right now. And if you don't want to hear it, just turn off this video. If you don't want to hear the ending, and maybe you might want to see The Locksmith, whether you want to pay for it, I'll have a link below. As far as links go for Amazon, and hopefully we'll find other places where you could see it. It's actually in theaters right now as of this weekend. I believe it's worth a digital purchase pick. I mean, for a couple bucks, if you want to see it, if you're a Ryan Phillippe fan, if you like crime thriller, that genre. Eric Holmes gave it about 3.5 stars, if I recall, and I gave it 4 stars. I just really like this era of filmmaking. I mean, this type of filmmaking. It's just very bare bones crime thriller, and I liked Phillippe and Kate Bosworth as well as Ving Rhames in the movie. All good, solid acting. The only barrier to entry as far as The Locksmith goes, if you're thinking of buying it, it's not a very flashy movie. It's more of a straight crime drama. So if you like that, you might enjoy The Locksmith. That said, spoiler stuff is coming right now in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so The Locksmith, if you guys have seen it or not, it centers on this guy named Miller Graham, played by Ryan Phillippe. He's a locksmith, knows how to pick locks, and he is framed right from the get-go in this botched safe cracking job where he gets some money, but he and his best friend, they're on this job. The best friend says he doesn't have a really good feeling about the situation. They might be set up, and yes, they were set up by the policeman at the time, the police detective at the time. His name is Ian Zwick, played by actor Jeffrey Nordling. You might know Jeffrey Nordling, best known for his recurring role on the TV series years ago on 24. So just look up Jeffrey Nordling on IMDb. If you're a 24 fan, you're gonna know who he is, what he's about, and etc., etc. But so, anyways, the movie starts with the frame job. Miller Graham's best friend is killed by the cop at the beginning. Okay, so that's a bad thing. And then Miller Graham, played by Ryan Phillippe, ends up in jail. The next scene cuts to 10 years later. He's out on parole now, and he's a free man, and he's trying to get his life back together. Again, during this 10 years, he was never a snitch. He was not a stoolie, none of this. Even though he was framed and his best friend was killed at the hand of the police detective, he never snitched. Okay, so he's gone. He's served his time, and now he's trying to pick up the pieces with his ex-wife, Beth Fisher, played by Kate Bosworth. Beth Fisher is a police detective in the area as well, and they have a daughter who probably by now is maybe 10 or 11. She's very good at the piano, and she's the daughter and the father. They're trying to reconnect. So it's very cute how they reconnect. There's a really cool getting to know you scene, or getting to know you better scene, where Miller teaches his daughter how to pick locks. And that girl is played by Madeline Gilbot, and she plays his daughter Lindsay. So that's the part of the family drama situation. Also, Ving Rhames plays Frank, sort of Miller's mentor and only friend when he gets out. And Frank is a handyman. He has his own business, and he helps Miller get on his feet with a couple of odd jobs here and there. Everything seems to be looking okay until Miller is accosted again by the corrupt police detective. Now he's 10 years later, he's a more powerful lawman. He has a couple of fellow cops at his side. All three of these cops are very corrupt, and they are basically trying to muscle him, just giving him the intimidation factor. And then what happens is his late best friend's younger sister, and she is played by Gabriela Quesada. She plays this girl named April. April tells Miller that he has to actually pull off some kind of poker job where her boss is at his house. He's holding a big poker gathering, and her boss is actually he not only sells real estate, he sells women. He is pretty much a well-established multimillionaire pimp to a lot of these women. And this girl tells Miller that he owes her one because of what happened to her brother. And April is claiming that she's being abused by her boss, and she's also an escort, but she wants him to actually steal some money from the boss's safe, about like $500,000. And he does so without not a little bit of fanfare. He's hooded. Miller Graham goes into the house. He steals the money. He also gets into a fight with the corrupt cop, again played by Jeffrey Nordling. Essentially what happens is $500,000 is missing. The pimp is obviously pissed. April disappears, and Miller's wondering where's April, because he's thinking he's doing a great job, trying to do a good job by her because he owes her, because her brother's dead. And he had a direct hand in his death by actually having his best friend go along with him in that operation from 10 years back. So the big twist in the movie is April, even if she was claiming she was abused by her boss, but she's actually probably being abused by some of the cops. Actually, she was probably being abused by the cops. It's never really clear who she was being abused by, but April actually masterminded the robbery of her boss. She was not the victim. She was actually the mastermind behind taking the $500,000, and she actually partnered up with the corrupt cops to take the $500,000. The corrupt cops would kill her boss, and the deal was the main bad guy, again played by Jeffrey Nordling, he plays the guy Ian. So Ian, the head of the cop division, he was going to take over the prostitution business, and April, because she masterminded this whole situation, she would take the $500,000 herself. So she would take the money and go off, and everything's fine. And then Ian would take over the prostitution, and assuming the multi-million-dollar enterprise by this boss. This boss's his name is Garrett, played by actor Charlie Weber. Sorry about that, guys. And Garrett ultimately, towards the end, he gets killed by Ian, gets killed by the head cop, and everything seems set in motion. And unfortunately, Ving Rhames' character Frank, he's a scenery. No matter what movie he's in, he's a scenery. I was going to say scenery chewing, but he's a scenery. He's a scenery stealing actor, and he's very good in this movie as well. And unfortunately, during a shootout at his office, Frank perishes, and actually takes not before killing one of the corrupt cops. So there's 3 corrupt cops. Now there's 1 down. Miller Graham, played by Phillippe, he's in the shootout as well, but he doesn't get anyone killed. Okay, so there's a reason why, because that's kind of my line of questioning towards the end. The end of the movie has Miller Graham realizing that April was in on the whole operation during a sort of a Mexican standoff with the cop. And instead of, the gun is pointed at Miller Graham, and the cop has him right in his sights, and he's about to kill Miller. But obviously the trope is he's telling Miller what's going on, that he and April were in cahoots all along. But before he could keep on going on and gloating about his situation, Ian gets shot by April. And April tells Ian that, hey, I never believed your story about my brother, because Ian was the one who killed her brother. But he probably told her story that he killed her brother because he pointed a gun at him in self-defense, etc. But April did not believe him, and she was doing on a multi-layered front stealing money from her boss, and at the end of it, she wanted to actually kill and seek revenge against the cop who killed her brother. And then on top of that, she is going to kill Miller because he was directly responsible for her brother's, I mean, indirectly responsible because they go on that heist together. She's about to kill Miller until Beth Fisher, played by Kate Bosworth, the cop, stops her in April in her tracks and tells her to put the gun down and everything like that. And April decides not to kill Miller, and she's at the end she's off in a squad car. And I forgot to mention their daughter was kidnapped for a moment by a couple of cops during this whole kind shenanigans. Okay, and during that situation, I believe she's taken by this guy named Detective Perez, and that corrupt detective is killed by Beth Fisher. So there's a lot of killing. There's the killing of the boss. There's a killing of the head cop. There's a killing of two cops. And during my line of questioning, I asked the director, or I asked Ryan about how his character Miller, even though he's a locksmith and he's the lead in the movie, the main quote unquote protagonist of the narrative, he doesn't do any killing. I mean, he shoots the gun, he punches a couple of people. I mean, there's a scene where he beats up the boss, the pimp boss, and everything like that. But he doesn't actually end up doing the whole revenge story where he doesn't end up killing any of the cops who wronged him. And ultimately, the people who save the day are Ving Rhames, who kills one of the cops in the office, and then his ex-wife, Beth, who kills the abductor of their kid. And ultimately, she actually saves her ex-husband's life by telling April to put the gun down. And then April also is kind of a hero because she kills the head cop before the cop has a chance to kill Miller Graham. So I know it's a very intricate plot line, but that's the end of the movie has their daughter playing a piano recital, some kind of piano recital, and she plays, at the beginning, she starts playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and it's a nod to her connection with Ving Rhames' character, who was humming, I think he was humming or playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star earlier in the film, or maybe 15 minutes earlier in the narrative. And that was her ode to remembering her late sort of quasi-uncle, Uncle Frank, played by Ving Rhames, towards the end of the movie. So ultimately, it ends up like her playing the piano composition Twinkle 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 Little Star, and then going on to her piano recital, and we're assuming the daughter is actually piecing her life back together because she was traumatized. She saw sort of a family figure played by Ving Rhames killed, and she was abducted, and yeah. So, but the good news is her parents are slowly getting back together. So that is a Locksmith. I'm sure you guys will not understand what this is about until hopefully you've already seen the movie. If you've already seen the movie, you kind of understand. But anyways, even if you wanted this stuff spoiled for you, I just spoiled it. I told you everything that's about the Locksmith. Also, Miller, I just found the Locksmith very interesting because it's really a character study of this locksmith, and he's not a big, flashy, tough kind of tough guy. He's just a person who was framed, and he had to spend 10 years in prison, and he gets out. And the people who are actually tougher is his ex-wife. She's for Pete's sake, she's a police detective, and even the April, the young woman who turned to be a prostitute, she has to suffer abuse from her boss, and she's smart enough and tough enough to mastermind this whole situation, which gets her boss killed, which gets the head of the police division killed, and also she's a few steps away from exacting vengeance on Miller Graham, but she doesn't because she ends up being kind of a nice person towards the end. So that is it for the Locksmith. That's my spoiler stuff. And now in lieu of that, here are the video clips of director Nicolas Harvard and then Ryan Phillippe. Thanks again, guys. Bye. Okay, so I'm going to cut this part of the interview and save it for the Patreon listeners. I'm going to have them watch the film, and we're going to talk about the ending. Okay. So,
Okay, yeah.
So my question to you is just, was there any ever discussion of having what's character's name, Miller, actually be more of a proactive force as far as seeking that vengeance? I thought it was a great move. The fact that it's Kate Bosworth's character who comes in and pretty much, quote unquote, saves the day after the double cross. Can you speak to that? Was that ever discussed, or was that a point. And then having Ving Rhames' character, he's so great in this movie. Having him pass on, was that ever?
Yeah.
Was that a regret? I'm not a regret. Was that something you ever thought about? He's so good. It's hard to actually let him go at that moment. So those 2 points.
Yeah, no, the fantastic questions. So yeah, the Miller and Beth dynamic was a conversation from the start, from the original script. That's very, very different from the movie. And there was always, in the original script, April is not part of the plot. She's a victim throughout, and they go to find her and save her. That was the original ending.
Okay.
So it was like reverse engineering, having her be part of the double cross, that somehow brought us to get the Miller and Beth arc of it to get to where it is now, where Beth, and every pass we were very intentionally giving Beth more agency and finding a way for her to be more the driving force in the third act.
And then April, it gives more generational trauma, that kind of agency as well, don't you think? Just I thought that was a great move by your part.
Yeah, we exactly, like we wanted to we wanted to kind of make her a bad guy, but a bad guy in spite of herself. Like, she's clearly been trafficked and brought into this world against her will, and so she ends up in a squad car. She's going to be arrested. She killed people, but at the end, the hope was that you still feel for her, and there's a bittersweetness to her being ultimately stopped by Beth, right? That it's a tragedy in that sense for her. I'm trying to remember the other.
And Ving Rhames. I mean,
Ving
was
Rhames,
that yeah?
Ving, yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the draft that we had about a month before shooting still had Ving in the climax and in the denouement. He was alive, and he would let them go off, like they would drive off into the sunset as a family while he said goodbye. And then at some point, we were in hard prep, we were scouting locations and we were looking at all of it, and we just didn't have that solid end of Act 2, Dark Night of the Soul moment. Like, it wasn't there, it wasn't solid. And it was just like, well, ultimately Ving is the B character, right? He's the reason, he's the the sounding board that Miller reasons with. He is the one that ultimately pushes him into Act 3 to go save his daughter, right? And we just, it was a big conversation. And I remember I kind of got to that conclusion, and I called the producers and I'm like, I think we got to kill Frank.
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
That was cool.
It became a big conversation because, you love Frank at that point. I was like, for that very reason, we have to kill him. And and we were just at the premiere on Monday, and I hadn't seen the movie with an audience. Only like a handful of friends who during editorials who would come for notes and that kind of thing. But I'd never seen like an audience experience the finished movie until Monday. And man, they were so sorry to see him go. It felt like we really got them.
I'm going to cut this very quick part from this interview for my Patreon listeners. I'm going to recommend they see The Locksmith, and then we're going to talk about the ending. So this will be cut out from the main interview. So I really loved how Miller at the end, he's not the guy who's guns blazing. He doesn't take out all the officers. It's actually his soulmate who does pretty much a lot of the work, saving quote unquote the day. And really Miller's story is quote unquote hero's journey is more about reconnecting with his family and not letting his rage take over. Did you love how this movie wrapped up? Because I thought it was very resonant.
Yes, yeah, it was. We didn't want to make like a revenge movie, like a John Wick thing where he's just gonna like scorched earth and kill anybody who gets in his way. We wanted there to be a groundedness to it, and especially to the family relationships. And that would be the reason, hopefully, that you root for the guy, because you see that he is trying to do good and he isn't a career criminal. He's not a guy who's a hardened, killer. He's not that. That's not who he was when he went in. When he was younger. And so yes, that does appeal to me. And I like the film takes a few twists in the third act, and the other actors in it, like you mentioned, Kate Bosworth, who plays my ex-wife and mother of my daughter, and Ving is so good in it. He's
good.
just such an appealing presence. He's kind of like the soul of the movie, and he's got like such a gravitas to him. Girl who plays my daughter, Madeline, is excellent. Jeff Nordling, the main bad guy. There's some really good performances, good actors in it.